the Mindset Athlete podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Matt Langridge. Matt is an Olympic champion from Rio 2016 in the men's 8. He's also a 4-time Olympian, having competed in Athens 2004, Beijing 2008, London 2012, and Rio 2016. He's a triple Olympic medalist, Beijing having attained the silver, London a bronze, and Rio the gold. He's a multiple world and European champion, a 2-time British record holder, and is currently training to become a pilot. So welcome onto the show, Matt.
Hi, James, you all right?
I'm very well, thank you. Obviously, to give some context to the listeners, I've known Matt probably, I was in the team for the 4 years that I was in the team from 2006 until 2009. So I've known you, nearly 15 years. So it took a long time to get going, to get you on the show, because obviously you were couple months ago, you were in South Africa on probably lockdown and didn't have the greatest internet. So obviously we finally got it to hold you in one place. But now you're back in the UK.
Yeah, no, I was actually out in Spain, but it probably had the same kind of internet connection as South Africa. So you were not far wrong.
So straight off the bat, obviously, let's get rid of this bias that the sport of rowing has. Ultimately, you and I both know that the senior team is not made up of mostly people that go to public school or private school for the Americans. Why do you think that bias still exists?
I think a lot of it for me is probably tradition. Obviously, it's like a lot of things, it's changed, but it takes a certain amount of time for it to change internally, but then it takes even longer for the perception to change. Obviously, there are traditional things like Henley regatta, the boat race, which are traditionally public school event. Obviously, if you look at Henley with the type of attire everyone wears, and then same with the boat races, it's still going to keep that perception of being very much public school within the sport. But in my career, since I started, it's changed massively. I think to the point now where I think very little of the elite level side is from the public schools now. I think the clubs deliver a lot more than they used to in terms of athletes, but then also we've had other kind of projects within the sport, like Project Awesome, which was a great one, which my club was involved in, where they kind of went round to state schools. You kind of and they basically gave more people the opportunity to try out the sport, and I think it's showing now that you can find talent anywhere, and it's great because I didn't personally go that route. I was originally inspired by watching the Olympics and kind of made me want to go down and join my local club. But I think it's just great having the opportunity and delivering the sport to more people. But it will, like I said at the beginning, it will take just time to change that perception and people's view on it. And there is an elitist sport, but actually now I think it's obviously going to have a certain amount of elitism to it because of in terms of where rowing clubs are. Obviously, they have to be near a river. So you're going to struggle in the middle of a city. Obviously London's got a few, but yeah, there's location might play an issue, but I definitely think it's all open to everyone now.
And you obviously said that you were inspired by the Olympics. Do you think, obviously, you've rowed in the prestigious blue ribbon event of the men's program. What's it like being a person on the inside of that, having to live up to those expectations year on and year out to deliver?
Well, I mean, certainly for us, the blue ribbon event is actually the 8th in terms of rowing terms, but obviously because of Steve Redgrave and in Sydney, and then the success we had in the 4, for us as a nation, obviously the 4 has been seen as our kind of the boat we've kind of made our own. But yeah, as a team, I think the standard's been set so high that now that it's almost expected that we're going to get gold medals. We're going to get medals. So actually, and in some ways that's great. It's great to be able to be part of that team. But also the downside to that is that it means that for guys who maybe go to Olympics and don't win, they're just an Olympian. You almost come away feeling a bit of a failure because it's almost expected if you're a rower as part of the British team, you're going to come away with a medal. Whereas actually just going to the Olympics is a great achievement in itself. But I think because of this expectation that rowers win gold medals or rowers win medals, it's kind of deemed almost if you come away without one, that you've underachieved and underperformed. But actually, there's a lot of sports where just going to the Olympics in that sport is a great achievement, and it should still be celebrated. But I think, unfortunately, with rowing, we've set such a high standard now that not everybody can come away with a gold medal, and not everyone can come away with a medal. But it doesn't mean that their kind of achievements of going are any less. But I think in some ways that's kind of the downside to being so successful as a team. But the upside to it is that it's a when you're part of the British team and there's that expectation on you. It's a massive confidence boost that you're training within a team that delivers gold medals. You're not the first person trying to tread an untrodden route. You're kind of following many people before you, and yeah, it definitely gives you confidence that you're in a program that's going to deliver medals and gold medals.
So, do you think, from that basis, the answer that you've given me, Matt, was Athens a failure then, in after the fact of going then, for you personally?
Yeah, in my eyes it was. I think certainly I was only 21, so obviously it was my first games, but my expectation was, I don't know whether it was to win, but it was certainly, we were hoping to medal. We thought we should have. So to not make the final was really disappointing. And definitely for me, Athens was, I was fortunate that I came away that I had another 3 Olympic Games to go to, because if I'd gone to Athens and that'd been my only one, I'd definitely ruined the opportunity. I was so focused on the result and achieving a medal that when we didn't, for me, as far as I was concerned, I didn't enjoy the rest of the games. I didn't enjoy the experience. I mean, if someone had put me on a flight and sent me straight home, I'd have been happy at the time. And it's only later, when I was kind of back in the UK and people asking me about, I don't know, what's it like to go to the Olympics, and telling me how amazing it must have been. And I just didn't enjoy the experience. But I then suddenly realised I'd actually missed out on this great opportunity. And because I've been so obsessed with having to get a medal, that I missed out on this great opportunity and to enjoy an experience that most people never get to do. So after Athens, and I really made sure that I said if I was lucky enough to go to another one, so when in the build-up to Beijing, I kind of made a deal with myself that no matter what the result was, I was going to park it, enjoy the games, enjoy the rest of the experience, and then I would deal with whether the result 2-3 months down the line when I was back in the UK. But I wasn't going to let that affect enjoying the experience, because as I said, it's kind of an experience that, you are very lucky to be able to go and experience, and a lot of people would be desperate for that opportunity.
So let's fast forward then to London 2012 then. Was it a little bit, because you'd beaten, if memory serves me right, you'd beaten the Germans most of that season?
No, we hadn't in the 8. So London was kind of a mix. So the Germans were definitely the favourites going into it. The Germans had won every race from Beijing to. So at Beijing, I think they'd come last in the 8th event. Had gone away, had obviously worked very hard, and then they won every race from Beijing through to London. So, and we'd definitely had an 8, I believe, was capable of winning, but we had a terrible season. We were going really quick early on, but then we had an injury to our stroke man, obviously a key seat, right before the first race, and that had kind of derailed it. I don't think we coped. We didn't cope very well with the setbacks. Rather than keeping calm and relaxed, it was kind of panic stations. So we turned up in London, definitely not the favourites. And actually, the Germans beat us in the heat. So we went to the final, and we knew that probably if the Germans raced their race and we raced our race, the Germans were most likely going to win. We felt that if we just raced our race, we'd probably get the silver. But obviously, London, home games, it was that kind of one chance to go and kind of win gold in front of your home crowd. So we kind of sat down, and to be honest, that was probably the first time we really kind of came properly together as an 8 and really decided that, yeah, okay, we're going to all be committed to this one goal. And we decided kind of to risk it and really go at the Germans. And the kind of simple strategy was to go off so hard that we put them under so much pressure that they would crack. They would, and hopefully we could put them off their game, put them off their stride. And it was kind of working with 200-300 metres to go to the line. But then sometimes you've got to give your opposition credit, and they kept their cool, they kept composed. And they didn't crack, and we did instead. We just kind of ran out of steam pretty much. So I think before that, the Canadians slipped us on the line. So we kind of slipped back into the bronze. I think to be honest, it had been another, 5-10 metres, we'd have lost the bronze as well. We were going back pretty quickly, backwards pretty quickly. But for me though, although I have a lot of regrets about the way we did the season, I don't have any regrets about what we did on the day. I was genuinely quite proud that we were prepared to take that risk and go all out for the gold medal. And I still did the exact same thing again. I think you get those, you don't get many opportunities to go for Olympic gold medal in front of your home crowd. And I'd take that every time.
So talk to me, what is it like? Because I have no idea. I've obviously been to 2 games, but no medals. What's it like to have the set?
It's a weird one because obviously, I'd like to say I'd had 4 gold medals, but in some ways, and it's hard to explain because people see Olympic silver medal or Olympic bronze medal, and it's a great achievement. And obviously, for me to try and say I was disappointed that I got the silver and the bronze, it's hard for people to understand. But I think the only way I can really kind of explain it is the fact that for us, we were going there for the gold. So when you don't get the gold, you feel you've missed the mark. If we'd gone there wanting to get a medal and got the bronze and the silver, then I'd have been over the moon. We'd have achieved what we set out to achieve. If we'd set out to try and get in the final and got in the final, but when you've kind of set this target, this is what you want to achieve, and you miss it, you can't help but feel that you've failed a little bit. I guess, I don't know, it's like anyone, if you're going for a first in your degree and you get a 2-1, for me, I think that's a fantastic achievement, but for the person going for the first, will probably be disappointed. The bronze and the silver, I was definitely disappointed that I hadn't got the gold. But I think now, having got the full set, I think that those disappointments have made me appreciate the gold medal so much more. I think kind of knowing that it's hard. To say that you've got a bronze and silver medal as a setback, but for me, they were at the time. And to be able to pick yourself up and then go again and then finally achieve the gold medal or makes it all so much more special. So yeah, so now I've got the full set. You can appreciate it, but I don't know how it would have been if I'm.
So obviously, you know the wall in Caversham. If it being, I think, is it only gold medals that's on that board? You know.
No, it's medals.
Oh, so that's not too bad. So that my question isn't irrelevant then from that one. But be it, the building would have opened in 2006. Do you think? I think rough. I think it was just before the home games in Dorney for the World Champs then.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Do you think having to look at that in the run up from going from obviously 2006 to all the way to Beijing and not seeing your name on that list, what went through your mind on a daily basis?
I mean, I think at that time the team's evolved a lot from when I first started in the team. It was only Redgrave and Pinsent or Redgrave and Cracknell that were winning gold medals. Everybody else was. So when I first started in Athens, we obviously had the four that won, but then nobody else on the men's side made the final. So at that time, it was kind of seen that, yeah, okay, I don't know, you kind of put them on a pedestal, and you don't. At the time, it's trying to bridge the gap a little bit. But then the more I've been in the team, and the more people have started to win and be successful, and then now, so we're kind of in a completely different situation. By the time I'd finished in Rio, it was a very different team and a different attitude to what it was when I was in Athens. In Athens, it was said it was almost like they were expected to win the gold medal, and everyone else was just scrabbling around trying to make the final. Whereas by the time I was in Rio, I mean, genuinely every boat had a potential to get a medal. I mean, everybody could have. It was the team had just come on so much, and the attitude within the team was that, yeah, we were so strong that. So I think it definitely changed quite a bit between that time. I mean, for me, I guess it wasn't so much about having my name on the wall. It was just about getting that gold medal and wanting to be Olympic champion. And yeah, it was always, I mean, that was the thing that was always driving me. Obviously, you have lots of things along the way lots of little goals along the way that you want to achieve. But yeah, in the back of your mind, it's always about trying to win the Olympics.
Do you think it obviously success breeds success then from going from 2004 to obviously I think the most successful was 2000 actually the Beijing games where I think almost every boat won a medal across the whole team? No, London, sorry, not Beijing, London.
I'm trying to think now. There's been so many games I can't keep up. I'm trying to. Yeah, I think. I mean, to answer. Yeah, I think definitely success does breed success. I think for me, it's. As I said, when I first joined the team, it was Matthew and James, and they were almost. They were almost viewed on this completely different level to everybody else. So in 2004, it was kind of they were, I said, put on a pedestal in the team, and everyone else was kind of at a different level. But then in 2005, then we had obviously they retired, and then we had the four win in 2005. But they were guys that previously had been at the same level we'd been at. So suddenly, as soon as kind of people that you see as your counterparts are winning gold medals, then it's amazing how quickly the expectation of everybody goes up. And that's kind of how it went. As soon as kind of the four without Matthew and James started winning, then everybody started looking at them and going, okay, well, hold a minute. If, like last year, they were the same level we were. Now they're winning gold medals. If they can do it, we can do it. And I think that's the attitude now within the team, where you train day in week in, week out together. So when guys in your team winning gold medals and you're training the same level they're training and producing the same speeds and results in training, then the expectation is like, well, if they're winning gold medals, we can win gold medals. And that just lifts the whole team. And I think it's the hardest thing, I think, is always to be first. I mean, you see in all sports. I mean, if you look at athletics, I remember when Bolt won in Beijing, and he was streaks ahead of the field. And then in London, he obviously won again, but wasn't as far in front of everyone. Yet his time was quicker. And I think because once one person set these new boundaries, these new levels, everybody lifts their game because it becomes possible. And a lot of it is when you break these kind of mental barriers that people put on themselves, that people only run so fast or row so fast or lift so much. But once somebody else does it, then everybody realises it's possible. And I don't know, I think that's the thing for me, is it shows how much of a mind game sport is, and how much, there's so much of it is mental. And yeah, sometimes it's hard to quantify.
So why do you think Jürgen Grobel has been so successful with that team for so long now? The men's in particular.
Well, I think obviously I mean, like I said, I think obviously it started with Steve and Matthew. So when he came over, he obviously had Steve and Matthew as full-time athletes. They were physically pretty phenomenal. And they were able to win gold medals. And then from that, obviously, it's got more. It's inspired. I mean, I said at the beginning, I'm an inspiration for the Olympics. So I was actually watching Steve and Matthew in 1996 that got me into rowing. I mean, I've never really heard about the sport. I've never really paid any attention to it. But at the time, I was massively into sport. So when the Olympics were on, I used to sit down for 2 weeks, be completely glued to the TV. I used to watch everything. And then in 96, we weren't, as a British team, very good at the time. We weren't as successful as we are now. So the only gold medal we got was in the rowing. And obviously that meant that it kind of got my attention. And then after the race, I remember people were talking about how tall people made good rowers. And as a kid, I was quite tall. And then from that, I realised there was a rowing club 5 minutes away from my house that I kind of walked past every day, but hadn't paid any attention to because I was rowing. So I then went down, and so I'm kind of was inspired by the Olympics, and I'm sure if I was, then there's probably lots of other people who were the same. So that's kind of obviously started the ball rolling. We are obviously, I think the other thing is that he's obviously a very good coach. He kind of knows how to train, and then has the confidence in what he's doing. Because he's been successful through the years. But then also I think the funding plays a massive part. If you can, I think probably wrong, but I think the funding came in 2000 or 2004, and it might have been before that, might have been earlier, but I think it's no surprise that since funding's come in, that the team has got more and more successful, because it requires so much to get to that level. If you can be a full-time athlete and you can do everything you can to the best of your ability, then you're going to be able to perform better. So I think there's various things that have made him so successful, but I think it's kind of grown with him. So,
is there anything that you miss from those heydays?
I miss the racing. I mean, for me, it was very much about the racing. I loved the racing. I didn't massively love the training. I loved the racing in training, but just the mileage every day. I would never say I mean, some of the guys love training. They love the kind of the grind. But for me, that was very much I did it. It was a means to the end because I enjoyed the racing so much. I missed that. I missed the summer racing. I think definitely the kind of camaraderie in the team I miss. It's weird though. I mean, I was in the team so long, and it's only when I retired in my final year that I realised to appreciate it. So there's a lot of things. If I went back when I was 20. I'd tell my younger self. But yeah, it's weird. There's only when I decided that Rio was going to be my last games, that suddenly all these training camps I've been on for, I don't know, 15, 16 years that I was so fed up and bored of and used to dread, then suddenly actually I really appreciated them, knowing that I was never going to go there again. I mean, so Sierra Nevada is a particularly miserable one. But actually I was able to go there knowing it was my last time and think, okay, well, yeah, I need to really make the most of it. Enjoyed being around the guys, enjoyed being part of the team. And yeah, suddenly my last year was my most enjoyable one, but it's always the way.
And obviously you have and always will have a love-hatred with the ergo or rowing machine for anybody else that is not a rower. And obviously you took it up back up again recently, obviously because of lockdown. What was that? What was that like?
Well, I think that just shows how desperate it was in lockdown, to be honest. I think if we didn't have the rowing machine, or the ergo as we call it, it would have made my life a lot easier. I definitely never really enjoyed it. It was I didn't actually mind the testing. I enjoyed the short stuff on it. I quite enjoyed it. I mean, people might think I'm a bit crazy for it, but I actually enjoyed like the 2,000 meter tests and anything like 2,000 meters and below. I used to enjoy. I enjoyed really pushing myself. The bits I didn't like was just the long, boring grinds, the 20Ks, the half hours. I used to dread every week because it's just kind of that dull, uncomfortable feeling. I'd almost rather be really intense for a short period of time rather than that kind of dull ache that you used to get in the long stuff. I think that says, for me, that probably just shows how bad lockdown was. I'd had quite, because I'd been away from it for so long, it wasn't so bad because I was able to, initially, when I first stopped, I didn't want to go anywhere near it because you just seen your scores get worse and worse. Whereas I think my scores had got so bad that every day it got slightly better. So in some ways I got a bit of reward from it again. But yeah, it was only a short fleeting moment to kill a bit of time during lockdown. It's definitely not something I'll be pursuing in the long term.
Is that because it was obviously your job for so long? And obviously your hatred, or I probably could generalize that and say most rowers hate the objects with a passion. Irrespective of their levels.
I think I probably hated more. I hated more than most. I think most people hate the short stuff, whereas I actually enjoyed the short stuff. I just hate the long stuff. But yeah, I think it was just the monotony of it all. And I think when I first started rowing, I was very much about. I enjoyed the feeling of the boat. I enjoyed being outside, and I think for me the fact there was no real technical element to the rowing machine. I didn't there is a certain technique, but in some ways it's quite different to in the boat. In some ways for me, it never felt quite like the boat. I had a row perfect for a while, which I actually much prefer because there's a bit more technical element to it. It gave me something to focus on, whereas the ergo just felt like a grind the whole time, and it's definitely a machine I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with. Mainly hate, but not a lot of love.
Is that even irrespective of Sierra Nevada? Because to give people some context that have either not seen that YouTube guys showcasing themselves on training camps, and that gives I think a great insight to some of the pain that you have to endure.
Yes. Sierra Nevada for me was probably the worst thing in Sierra Nevada was first thing in the morning and 20 kilometers on the rowing machine. By the end of it, I used to really have to psych myself up for it because it was so miserable. It would just be, your body would be half asleep. It felt like, some people cope differently with altitude. So if people listening, it's 2000. The best way to describe Sierra Nevada is a leisure centre on top of a mountain. It was built for the Spanish, the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. So it's a high altitude training camp. There's no water. It's just land-based. So it's 40 kilometers a day on the row machines. It's weights, a bit of football, maybe the odd bit of running, bit of swimming, but it's mainly row machine and weights. And yeah, the worst session was always 20 kilometers first thing in the morning, because your body is half asleep. The last thing it wants to do is kind of is jump straight on a row machine, and then from stroke one be expected to pull a split. And then you add that the fact there's no oxygen. And I said, people deal differently with altitude. Some people, it doesn't really affect that much. For me, it used to affect me. I used to struggle quite a bit. So it was like breathing through a straw. My mouth would be like sandpaper, because I just felt like the air was so dry. There was no airflow, so your skin just felt like it was on fire. It was just, from stroke one to finish, it was just miserable. And as you see, I mean, if you see the videos, it was pretty awful. And that definitely for me was the camp I probably hated, disliked the least. On top of that, the food was dreadful, which never. And the worst thing about it was the coaches just sneak off early midway through our rowing sessions to get all the best food. so by the time we finished and we got to the canteen, all the best food had gone.
So of Sierra Nevada is the worst. Which one's the best camp that you can remember to memory then?
So one of my favourites used to be Cyprus. So we used to go to this amazing hotel in Cyprus, but it was cycling. And I've always loved cycling. So I used to, my coach when I was a junior used to be a cyclist, and he got me into cycling. And I've always loved cycling. So that was probably one of my favourite ones, because it was an amazing hotel. Food was great, but then obviously the fact that the majority of the training was on the bike, I really enjoyed. But then actually probably my favourite camps were the last camp before either the Olympics or the World Championships, because it'd be in the middle of summer. The mileage would be coming down, which you might have gathered. I was never a fan of long distance. I was always a fan of the shorter, more intense stuff. So the mileage would be coming down. The speed work would be going up, which is the stuff I enjoyed. I enjoyed the speed work. I enjoyed the racing and training. So yeah, I think that was always my favourite. We used to go to Beijing for a long time, which was just beautiful. It'd be really nice in the summer. You'd finish a piece and then jump in to cool down. And yeah, it was probably Beijing. I think it was probably one of my favourite. Yeah, so Cyprus and Beijing I'd probably say were kind of my favourites. We used to go to South Africa in January, which was always quite nice to escape the British winter for a couple of weeks. I mean, it was a hard camp. So training wise, it would be pretty, but just the fact that you're away in South Africa, in the middle of the January blues is always made it a little bit better.
So let me ask you an even more difficult question now, Matt. Obviously, of the 15 career plus that you were able to row, from a competition standpoint, what was your best regatta course to race at, and why?
My favourite is probably still Lucerne. And I've had really mixed results there. I've had some of my best races there. I mean, probably the best racing I've done has been at Lucerne, but also some of the worst has been at Lucerne. I think for me, it's a beautiful place. It's kind of right in the middle of the Swiss Alps. So you've got it's surrounded by the mountains, but it's right near the town as well. So it makes, for spectators, it's great because it means there's no kind of getting buses out to a lot of the lakes we used to race at well out of the city. So it can be a bit of a pain getting spectators back into, whereas this is in the city, so people can come down and enjoy it. And it's just a really nice place to race. And it's also the last race before the end of the season. Before the break, before we do the World Champs or the Olympics. And I always felt that the more racing I did, the better I got. So, I kind of felt that generally I was kind of on top form at Lucerne. So although yeah, I've had some dreadful races there, but I've also kind of had some of my best ones. I think. If I think to my best race in Lucerne is probably where I've had the best racing. So Henley is also for me also been pretty special. I had various arguments throughout the years with Jürgen about being allowed to race Henley because for me, it's not on our racing calendar. It's probably not given the same weight as a World Cup or a World Champs or the Olympics. For me, it's as the British team, we should always be there representing. And sometimes Jürgen felt that the World Cup should take priority, but I personally would have always put Henley in front because it's just kind of the atmosphere is just incredible. Racing down, having 100,000 people down the bank cheering you on. That 1-on-1 as well, I think you kind of can't beat it. So I think that throughout the years I've kind of raced some pretty, in terms of venues for the Olympics, I'd probably say Rio is most spectacular. In terms of the venue, because it's on a natural lake right in the centre, I'd probably say out of the Olympics, that was the most spectacular.
And do you think, coming back to the one where you said about Henley, do you think obviously the traditional aspect of it being so symbolic of the sport as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, it's just, I mean, I think obviously a lot of people they like the kind of tradition side of it. They like, and I do think I think that the traditional side of it is great. It's why it's so kind of so special. I think they've made some really good advances though in terms of the TV coverage. I mean, in terms of watching rowing on TV, Henley, for me, the coverage in Henley is way better than any of the other stuff. As obviously I've been retired for 4 years, so I'm now a spectator rather than an athlete. I could genuinely sit down and watch all the rowing at Henley and enjoy it. It's kind of the coverage is really good. I think that's a kind of good advancement in it. But I think as an athlete point of view, it's just the atmosphere is racing down, kind of just being that, I don't know, that kind of side by side, just you and one of the crew waiting to see who cracks. You just can't beat it. I think it kind of just brings a different dimension to the sport. It's different to multi-lane racing. I mean, obviously, multi-lane racing, you're usually, if you're a favourite crew and you're in the middle of the lake, you're genuinely quite a long way from the crowd. And the racing is a bit more, it's a bit more A to B, because whereas Henley, obviously, you have to race your opposition. If you get dropped and you get behind, then they're in the kind of driving seat and can do so much to put you off your game. It's a bit more kind of you've got to. It brings in that competitive element, which I enjoy. I enjoy that kind of sitting on the start line and just say, okay, let's go and see who's going to crack first. And then being so close to the crowd, I think there's just nothing like it. I mean that's the one regatta actually since I've finished racing, that when I've been down, I really wish I'd been on the water. I can watch the World Cups, the World Champs, and kind of be happy that I've done my time. And obviously it'd be nice to race, but I'm not desperate to be there. Whereas Henley, I stand at the side of the bank and I wish I was on the water, which is weird because for years I was always on the water wishing I was on the bank, but that's always the way.
So let's go the other end of the spectrum as well then, Matt. So you say you hated the distance stuff. What's your take on when you had to do heads and things like that?
I was never a fan of them. They were all right when I was younger, because when I was growing up and they, I kind of used to do them on a club level, I was quick enough to make them into a race so you could overtake people. Whereas by the time you get to like international level, like the only kind of head stuff we do now are trials or the 8 head. Everybody is such similar speed, and there's no real overtaking. So it's just a time trial, and yeah, it's never really been something I've massively enjoyed. I enjoy being next to a crew. I did enjoy the eights head. One of the funnest things, actually, though, we used to do before the eights head was because I was racing for Leander, we'd usually have a match race against Oxford or Cambridge. We used to alternate, and we wouldn't do the full boat race course. We'd usually do half of it. But that I used to love. I used to love doing that kind of side of it, much more than I did the head. Just, yeah, for me, I like the competitive element. I like the being side by side, seeing who's going to crack first. Whereas obviously when you race against the clock, you're never going to beat it. Usually it's me who cracks and not the clock. So it's, yeah, I never really, I don't know. I never really managed to find the same kind of performance in the time trial stuff as I did in the side by side. I don't know why. I just used to always be able to find an extra gear when I was side by side. I remember at trials we used to, even when I was backed in the single, we did the time trial, and I think I'd have gone absolutely max out, and that was the best I could give. And I look at the result, and I'd be down in like 10th place and wondering how the hell I was going to make the A final. And then suddenly we get side by side, and it found me I was up and I was leading, and it was a completely different ball game. And I don't know where it came from, but yeah, never could manage to replicate the same performance against the clock as I could against opposition. So, but I do think that the heads have got their place in rowing. I don't know. I do find though, as a sport though, it's a bit of. I mean, for me, it seems like there's a lot more head racing and very little regattas in comparison, which I feel is a real shame. I think it's a bit domestically. I find it a bit weird that people train so much, go through the miserable winter, do all the heads, and then they usually knock it on the head by beginning of July after Henley's done. And it's like, well, you've still got the rest. You've still got 2-3 months of the summer where you could be racing. And like I said, for me, that's what the sport was about. It was about racing. So, yeah, I think maybe I was unusual, but it seems the sport's a bit weighed and kind of a bit too weighted towards the head season than the regatta season for me. But I'm not in charge.
So my penultimate question to you, Matt, is if you had to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
Any athlete dead or alive? I'd probably say Muhammad Ali. I don't know if that's too obvious one. I'd like to give you a really obscure one that would kind of shock everyone, but I don't know. I mean, for me, he was just so charismatic. I think there's very few sportsmen who kind of gravitate beyond their sport. I think obviously you've got likes of Muhammad Ali, Usain Bolt. Federer's probably done it a little bit in tennis, or Michael Jordan. I don't know if you've seen the latest, The Last Dance, which obviously, but yeah, I mean, we're guys who they're more than just the sport. They kind of are able to kind of are known beyond the sport. I mean, I think whether you're into sport or not, I think everyone's heard of Muhammad Ali, and I think that's because of his charisma and his attitude and kind of what he did. And yeah, I mean, for me, it's just more the fact that he just seems like it'd be so much fun to be around. And so yeah, but I think for me, on a general level, I think that's kind of what I find really interesting as a sportsman is. And what's great about going to the Olympics is you get to chat to all the sports people. And I find it really interesting to hear what we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to all be the best at our sport, but we're all doing it in very different ways. Like the amount of training. I mean, I remember chatting to some of the sprinters after Rio, and you listen to the amount of training they do compared to what we do, and it's completely different because the dynamics of it are completely different. But everyone's trying to do the same thing, just in very different ways. So I find it really interesting to kind of chat to people and kind of hear how it differs. I remember chatting to someone's mum, it's one of the gymnasts' mum after Beijing, and she was saying about how like rowers we have quite short sessions because in gymnastics our sessions like 3 hours long, whereas ours obviously usually about an hour, 2 hours. And I was like, yeah, but the difference is it'd been almost like a gymnast swinging around the pole for constant, because obviously ours is a constant session, and it doesn't. So they just differ in the way that they in their kind of approach, but everyone's trying to do it the same way and be the best they can be, which is what I find really interesting though, because I do think that all sports are so different, but you're all trying to achieve the same objective.
I did say that was a penultimate question, but I want to get your take on this. If you had to kind of not summarize what aspects of training rowing has, if you had to kind of give a snapshot of what kind of caliber athlete you had to be for people outside of rowing, how would you describe it?
It's a good question. Rowing's a really weird sport. People ask me to describe what it is about rowing that I enjoy, and it's when you put it on paper, it sounds terrible. you get up early in the morning, you go backwards, you get cold, you get wet, you have to do a lot of training. It's kind of one of those sports that when you write it down, you think, God, why on earth did I row for so long? But the only way I can really describe it is because the training is so hard, you have to put yourself in that kind of uncomfortable place so much of the time. It makes that success so much more rewarding. And I think it means that, it's kind of, it means that when you do win, or even if you improve, like even if it's like on a 2 kilometer row machine test, the fact that you've had to work so hard for that improvement makes that so much more rewarding, because nothing comes easy in rowing. I think as an athlete, I mean, obviously it's a strength endurance sport, but I think that the mentality that you have to have is almost kind of, it's kind of difficult to really describe the mentality you have to in rowing, because it's a lot of it is just it's kind of it's uncomfortableness. You have to kind of, I mean, no, I guess I'm doing it a disservice. Yeah, when it's glorious day in the middle of summer, it's nice and hot. It's great. There's nowhere better to be than out in the water. But I think for me, it's that sense of satisfaction that of really know you've worked for something that when you achieve it, it kind of gives you that ultimate satisfaction. I don't know if I'm really answering your question in terms of kind of what athlete you have to be there. I think you have to be, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you did it. How would you describe?
Well, the discipline was totally different back when I did it. It was only 1,000 meters. Sorry. So the sport.
I wish I could have done your distance.
It's completely different. We were. I'll give you some context and give some context to the listeners. We were very much in agreement to go the opposite way, do like the Olympic distance. Every other country is like, no, we can't do it. It's like, well, why? Ultimately, yes, the athletes need to get better, fitter, and stronger. We were doing that anyway. We're doing like over distances like you guys would do anyway, as a component of to test the engine. Well, if you can go more than the distance, yes, you have to make some allowances to account to be able to go a little bit further. But we were it's a totally different race, 2,000 meters to 1,000 meters. So would I have been more successful in that career? I'd like to say possibly, but I don't know. That's all hindsight, and it's all speculative. But it's very much probably like you did in London. It's gun to tape. There's no technical nous about 1,000 meters because you can just balls it out. Whereas 2,000 meters, in a smaller boat, which I was obviously in the double, you got to have some technique to be able to obviously increase the speed in certain parts of the race. Whereas, okay, there might be a little bit of jealousy towards other things, but there's no regret now with me. And I think ultimately I would have liked, and I think it has since gone up to 2,000 meters and everybody's followed suit. But it's like comparing apples to oranges now a little bit. But I think I would have been more than happy to have done 2,000 meters because ultimately it's well, we train for it anyway.
Yeah.
There's a different dynamic to it. And I think, well, the time I was rowing, my classification was after all the Paralympics, it was the most competitive. So by them deeming reclassifying, obviously me as well, because that's why I left the sport, it kind of imploded and it went backwards for a little bit. I think it's managed to recover probably about Rio times. That's like 6-7 years later. But I thought they would have been a little bit more probably proactive. Ultimately, as us as a program, we would have still been successful in it with GB anyway. So that's probably why other countries probably didn't. Well, we're not going to follow you because you're already quite dominant as a program anyway. Why are we going to give you more of an advantage? But I think where you said being comfortable, being uncomfortable, wherever athlete should want to do that because ultimately it's more satisfactory. It's more. You appreciate it more. Ultimately, I've got World Cup wins and things like that, but no world champs, no Olympics or Paralympics to go with that. But I think where I'm quite content is that was like you said with Steve and Matthew being like the first of the modern era to kind of springboard the Olympic program. I'm one of those first ones to have done it in the Paralympic with Beijing being the first one. So I was probably one of the first to congratulate the double in my discipline when they won in Rio. It's like, yes, I'll get off my high horse and get out my way with the ego because ultimately that boat was better than mine and I have to give it credit because ultimately he won the event and congrats. And they were the first to thank you very much. And I think I was watching the World Champs last year. Tom Dyson, who's the lead coach now, he actually said on television, I'd like to thank all the athletes that's past and present. It's like, I know you're not talking me directly down the camera, but I can appreciate, obviously we've laid the foundations, probably, obviously to give some context to the listeners, because you and I were part of the same World Championship teams. It was very weird to then go, 6-7 World Championships, 2008 split. It was very like, this doesn't feel, you guys are out in Beijing. We're on a training camp watching you guys in Spain. So it felt very, not awkward, but surreal. It's like, well, this normally would be all together. And I think like we said on the entirety of the episode, success breeds success. The Olympic program has got the pedigree. We're part of that team normally. We have to deliver, and they've been the best team ever since. And we're at the Paralympics, and I think it's the program to beat. I think will it be like that for forever? Probably not. But
I think for me, like certainly from my side, and I think all of our kind of. We definitely have to owe a lot of our success to Steve and Matthew. I mean, like I said, they set it off for the British team, and then, like I said, I am big blue that success breeds success. So I think, a lot of the athlete. I mean, obviously we're doing it in our own right. We're putting the hours in our own right, but actually they started the ball rolling for us. They started winning, and from that the team became stronger and the money got pumped in, and like you're right, some of you guys obviously started in 2008, and then it's got grown bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're always walking in the footsteps of the people who've tried it before you, and it is hard. I mean, like it's much easier to be in a successful team and carrying it on rather than be the first person to kind of go out there and do it.
Well, also you had them come round with their media engagements as well. So they were in and around the boathouse, obviously being a media perspective, and and they obviously lived it and breathed it themselves. So they probably push the right questions. It's like, okay, I'm not going to try and catch you out, but are you prepared to handle this mantle?
Yeah, but I think for me, I guess we're going off tangent, but like obviously in terms of the sport, definitely there's the athlete side, but then there's also kind of as a sport I think rowing in itself is it's pretty obvious to where the Olympics is going now. Obviously, it's becoming more commercial. It's definitely, the sports that have been brought in because they're commercial and they bring in viewing rights and they get media. And I definitely think as a sport, rowing needs to look seriously at itself and needs to think about, okay, what can we do? Because otherwise, as a whole sport on boat, it's in danger of missing out on it. Probably actually less. It's in danger of kind of losing its place in the Olympics if it's not careful, because we don't bring in the viewers that other sports do bring in, and we have big numbers. So I do think as a sport, like, okay, yeah, it is this endurance sport, and like I said, the satisfaction is, you have to put yourself in a pretty deep place to win a 2,000 meter race. And yeah, okay, it's uncomfortable at time, but it gives you the ultimate reward when you achieve it. However, as a sport, we do have to have a serious conversation about what we can do to make it more spectator friendly, more viewer friendly. And it won't detract from the sport in my eyes. It may change it, but there might, and I'm not the person who's going to decide, but whether they do bring it down to 1,000 meters, whether that, for me, it's worth asking the question, because it might mean that you can get more venues closer to the city centres, so it's easier for spectators. It might make the racing closer. It might make it more feasible. It might mean you can do more doubling up, so you can make the numbers smaller. That might not be the answer. It might be something else completely different, but there probably needs to be some serious looking at the sport, because otherwise it might lose its place. And obviously, as someone who's grown up in rowing for so long, that's the last thing I'd ever want it to happen. But unfortunately, the way that all sports are going, they are becoming more and more commercial, and we can't just rely on it being a traditional sport anymore, because you will lose its place. And I think for me, there's lots of things as a sport we can do, but you almost have to have the courage to go away from the set format. I found myself having been in the sport for so long and then having stepped away from it, it's very, I don't know, you can tell me your view on it, but it's very easy to almost lose track of what's going on because it doesn't have much coverage. Generally, the World Cups are shown at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning when most people are still recovering from a hangover. It's hard unless and it's not because I wanted to, but it is quite easy to lose track of what's going on and who's currently racing. And I do think that, yeah, as a kind of as a sport, we have to look at how we can make it more commercial, how we can get more interest in it. And as athletes, I'm not in it anymore, but people will easily adapt. At the moment, when I did the sport, it was very much you hide yourself away from the media for the whole 2 months before the Olympics. Whereas other sports are getting interviewed 2 minutes before they start their race. So everybody else if you look at the F1, they're being interviewed on the grid 5 minutes before they hit the first corner at 200 miles an hour, whereas for us, we were seen like, we can't possibly be distracted for 3 months before the games. And then we question why, as a sport, people aren't as interested in our sport as they are in other sports. And for me, there's kind of obvious reasons. When you're hiding yourself away, you can't expect people to then be interested. But that's said, I'm not involved in it, so unless somebody's going to ring me up and ask my opinion, then. But I obviously, I was an athlete for a long time, and now I'm just a rowing fan. So for me, I kind of want to see that it kind of does develop, and I'd hate for it to lose its place in the Olympics. But I think unless they seriously look at it, it could be in danger of doing.
I've never even thought of that in terms of you've got to, and it's very much. I think you raise a good point there, Matt. That it's very much like life. If you don't evolve, you die.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's you only have to look at the sports that are coming in. I mean, you only have to realise that that they're coming in because they bring in money, they bring in viewers, and ultimately money talks. And obviously it costs a lot to put the Olympics on, and countries can't do it for free. The sponsors pay a lot of money, and they want to get their money back, and so they are looking at sports that are going to bring in viewers. So we have to look at how we can bring in viewers, and I think the problem is you get the old diehards of rowing who say, okay, well, it will detract from the sport, but actually all these other sports are able to do it, but still have the sport. There'll still be a winners and losers. There will still be a race. It will still be over a distance. It just might not be what it always was, but you can still have a sport that everyone compete in. But I think, if you're not prepared to change, then you might lose your place. And I think, I mean, you look around and other sports are constantly evolving because they know how much they need the financial side of it. So I think there's probably some people need to put their heads together and kind of come up with almost have a blank sheet of paper and say let's try and put some ideas together and see what we can do, because at the moment I think, and that's why, I mean, go back to Henley, I think Henley's doing a great job. It's the one regatta that doesn't need to do it because it does get a lot of interest. It does get the money and it does have the people turn up to watch it. But they're still trying to do stuff like with the coverage and everything to try and make it more interesting, try and make it more popular. And it's just a shame from my side that the rest of rowing isn't doing it. If you look at the international regattas and the World Championships and the World Cups, it's still standing still. It's still the same format that hasn't been working for the last 15 years. And I think it's... it's been working from the athlete side, but not from the viewing sides. And I think that the athletes will adapt. The athletes will always find they'll put a race on, they'll put a show on, they'll adapt. But if we're not careful, there won't be a sport for them to compete in. So I think it needs probably looking at.
My final question this is the final question to you, Matt. If you had to summarize what we've been speaking about today into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
I don't know. I mean, it's. I think for me, I mean, obviously, from my story, it's a lot about persistence. It's hard to really explain, because obviously I never want people to think, okay, a silver and a bronze medal is something to be disappointed with. So it's hard to really explain it. But obviously for me, because I was going for the gold, that's not me trying to say that somebody who's got a silver medal shouldn't be happy with it, or a bronze medal shouldn't be happy with it. Obviously they should be if that's what they're trying to achieve. But for me, at the times they're disappointing. And the thing, I guess, for me and my story in rowing was the fact that I had the determination and persistence to carry on and finally achieve. And obviously we mentioned now I'm trying to be a pilot, and I'm having to again be tested because due to COVID, it's probably the worst time to be in aviation. And there's been a lot of setbacks along the way. I mean, it's probably actually my persistence is being tested more now than it actually was ever as an athlete. But I think kind of my experience as an athlete has probably stood me in good stead. It's kind of taught me that, if you kind of have enough determination and you're persistent enough, and then eventually you get to where you want to be. It might not be a smooth road. It might take longer than you thought it would, but hopefully I'll eventually get there. And it's obviously it's being tested now more than I think more than ever was as an athlete. So For various reasons. But yeah, I'm sure in the end I'll get to where I want to be.
So once again, Matt, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, it's nice to chat.
Well, it's been my pleasure. If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends, and do let Matt and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging us over on Instagram at Matt_Langridge8. So that's MATT_LANGRIDGE and the number 8. And as always, you can do the same at James O. Roberts 11. So that's JAMES O, as in the letter O, ROBERTS and the number 11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And in addition, if you had any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check out his website, mattlangridge.co.uk. So that's MATTLANGRIDGE.co.uk. And as always, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk and click on the tab resources. But not forgetting, I've also started a Facebook group, especially for the show, which you can find by typing in The Mindset Athlete. And last but not least, and not forgetting, I've also rebranded my other Facebook group to Adapt, Master and Improve Your Exercise and Diet to help you lose 10 pounds plus. So make sure to check those links out. They will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.libsyn.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast.